mathematician, astronomer, and accidental computer security sleuth. Meet Clifford Stoll, an inspiration to millions, a tech icon, and a hero of the digital revolution.
Oh yeah, it was 1986. I'm doing astronomy over in Berkeley, California, and I'm an astronomer. I'm working on the Keck 10-meter telescope, working on how do we design optics, and using this bunch of workstations of VMS and Sun workstations using Unix. And one day I'm walking and I notice the accounts are off to the tune of 75 cents. My accounting inside my Unix machine is out of balance. I'm saying, that's weird. I don't think that should be, because the computer shouldn't be making nickel and dime mistakes. So I start poking at it, and I notice that, oh, it looks like there's somebody using my Unix machine without permission. An account from a friend of mine, Joe Sventek, is being used without any permission. Somebody has changed the password to it. See, that's weird. The usual thing is, I'll just log in, disable the account, make it go away. And I'm sitting there in astronomy lecture. What are these boring guys talking about gravitational waves and how galaxies get spiral arms because of gravitational waves, and really how stars themselves slow down certain areas. So I'm listening to this, and naturally, the more equations there are on the board, the more I fall asleep, and I'm starting to sleep, and it occurs to me, it's probably not some guy sort of just fooling around with my computer. It's probably somebody hacking into my system. How would they do that? Well, in Unix, they'd have to be super user. Maybe I have a hacker, somebody who's coming in who has super user privilege. They're able to get in and manipulate anything they want in my machine. They have the same license that the system administrator has. Start thinking about it, and I come back and say, how can I find it? How can I prove this? Maybe it's this, maybe it ain't. How can I prove it? Yes, prove it no. I know what I'll do. I'll look at all the incoming lines into my Unix system. I'll put monitors on all the lines coming from the outside. Well, this is 1986, 1987. This is way long ago. This is back when no one even knew what the internet was. People in the know called it the ARPANET. Long ago, back in the Jurassic. So I figure, I'll monitor all the traffic coming in. So how do you do it? You put a teletype, one of these mechanical printers or a decorator, or these impact printers or something to record traffic coming in. All right, 50 lines coming in. It means I need 50 printers and 50 things. The first one or two, I'd take one off my desk, haul it over the basement at Lawrence Berkeley Labs over and hook it up there. And second one, get it from a friend's office. But after about 5 or 6, you run out of friends. You run out of cubicles to raid. So I took advantage of one of the very few things that I learned in grad school, namely that it's a lot easier to apologize later than to get permission in advance. So I waited around the lab till 5:30, 6 o'clock, Friday afternoon, then just went from office to office, liberating people's computer equipment and hauling it down to the basement of Building 50, Lawrence Berkeley Labs, where our computers were, and set them up, hooked them up so that every time there was a serial line coming into my machine, I'd be able to record it on a printer or record it on a floppy disk. And again, remember, this is way back in the 1980s when those things existed. And unrolled a sleeping bag, got into it, thermos bottle with tomato juice, hot tomato soup, and fell asleep. And next morning, Saturday morning, director of the lab comes by and says, kicks me out of my sleeping bag, says, I understand. And this is the director of the lab. He wears a tie and has a beard. He's important. So he comes by and he says, I understand there's some equipment missing from around the lab. There I am, stretched out on the floor and surrounded by deck writers and teletypes and printers and various things. And I say, I don't know anything about it. He says, well, it would be a right neighborly thing if they were sort of returned. So I pick them all up, put them back in the carts and roll them back to where they started from. And from one of these printers, this 20 feet printout showing how somebody, a record of how somebody has come into our computers at Lawrence Berkeley Labs, logged in, taken advantage of a programming hole, a mistake in a program attached to the Unix operating system, has become super user, administration privileges, has gone out through our local area network, out over what was then the only router on in the northeastern part of California, to go out over the ARPANET, break into a military computer, start siphoning information out of a military computer in Anniston, Alabama, copying it back through our computer back to somewhere. I'm looking at this stuff and I'm saying, this is weird. I'm looking at some hacker break into my computer stealing military information. This is weird. So I did what anybody else would do. I call up the FBI and say, hey, the guy's breaking my computer. They're stealing military stuff. Guy at the FBI says, oh my God, that's serious. How much money did you lose? I said, well, we lost about maybe 65, 75 cents worth of computer time. The guy at the FBI office says, well, go away, kid. Call us when you lose a couple $1 million. That didn't seem like fun, so over the next few months, called up, talked to the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and all these places. And eventually it took a year of tracing things back and finding that, oh yeah, the guy would come in and he was stealing military stuff. He kept searching, repping for things involving anything dealing with national security, which of course is completely kooky because at Lawrence Berkeley Labs we do research in astronomy, in physics, in basic science. We're not a military installation, but this guy thinks that we are, which says he's not around here. Meanwhile, we're tracing him backwards, tracing him from Berkeley, California into Oakland, across AT&T long lines, way back when AT&T ran the long distance service. So we trace him back to Virginia, and from there up into a satellite. But then it turns out to track him back further, it would take 2 hours or so. And the guy was smart enough, he was clever enough, that he'd only connect for a few minutes at a time. So I'm saying, how are we going to catch this guy? We have to keep him online for a couple hours in order to track him across the ocean. But in order to do that, we need something that he'll go for. So I said, I'll set a trap. I'll make a file in my system that's so interesting, full of all sorts of bogus national security things, filled with all sorts of neat things that somebody will say, oh wow, I gotta read this. So made up the stuff about the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI network, and the guy starts reading it. It takes an hour and a half, 2 hours, just copying it all back across this line. And meanwhile, we're tracing it back across Berkeley to Oakland, AT&T, Virginia, across over into a satellite, from a satellite link down into what was then West Germany. Today it's Germany. From West Germany over to a place called Hanover to, and back to the guy's apartment. It turns out the German Bundeskriminalamt, the German police, trace it back to an individual and find that this guy is involved with a bunch of other guys who are collecting passwords in pathways into military systems and selling it retail to what was then the Soviet KGB. They were spies. I mean, this is completely weird. Here I'm in Berkeley, California, at the far left of the continent, stumbling onto a bunch of spies trying to steal military information over what was then the early part of the internet. Well, okay, that's more than 20 years ago. This happened way long ago when pterodactyls were flying around and when almost nobody had a 2400 baud modem and hardly anyone carried a pocket pager. Today, of course, almost nobody has a pocket pager and nobody has a 2400 baud modem. So I guess it's sort of come full circle. Is there a lesson to be learned? Yeah, probably. I'd scratch my head and say, when something weird happens, when something happens that you don't understand, oftentimes, but not always, oftentimes, it's worth spending time to sort of figure out what's the weirdness. It's out of problems that you can't understand that you make progress. Doing science means bumping into something that makes you wonder, that you don't know the answer to. And in getting to the answer, brings you to an understanding of our bigger world around us. I'm Cliff Stoll over here in Oakland, the same old place, 22, 23 years later, more like 25 years later, thinking, yeah, next time it'll happen to somebody else.